Holbrook here with The Road Forward, and I've got Alex Chubenko with me, also known as the Tow Piglet. Alex, how you doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. So this is kind of a fun episode. First I want to introduce Alex. So Alex is I don't know. I would call you like a master content creator on the internet. YouTube, I don't know. Are you a YouTube influencer? I call you a YouTube. You're way more of an influencer than I am.
I wouldn't use the word master. Okay.
Okay.
Right. I would say I just started uploading videos for fun, and then it kind of turned into something, and and it's like you get a little bit of experience from there. So I would not necessarily a master, but proficient.
Yeah. There you go. Right. So. I guess we're all proficient at different things. So, and YouTube's a pretty cool one to be proficient at. So I met Alex. I mean, if you listen to the show, we haven't had an episode in a while. And that's because I got super busy as the host of this show, running a software company and doing a great job for our customers. And I just ran out of time to go out and find great guests to bring onto the podcast. And so enter Alex, right? So I ran upon Alex. I just happened upon his YouTube channel and this video where he's talking about how his trucking company's going out of business. So he built this whole YouTube channel, right, around how do you start a trucking company? How do you run a trucking company? Like a lot of the stuff that we talk about on this show, maybe at a more advanced level, because a lot of times we're talking about safety and culture and strategy and how do you differentiate and these kind of things, not so much about how do you get your FMSCA authority and your DOT going and whatever. And so I reach out to Alex because I think his video is pretty interesting. And I'm kind of like, hey, Alex, like if you don't have anything going on, I've got a podcast that you can run and a few other things that you could help with on our team. And he responded and was like all in. So here we are on the podcast.
I think I called. I think you. Because I get the automation that texts it to my phone right away with the responses, and I think I was like, "Oh, great! This sounds really interesting." So I just called right away. And it was like a Saturday afternoon or Saturday evening, I think it was.
Yeah, it was. And then we connected again. Maybe it was Sunday. I don't remember. But anyway, we kind of worked out the details. And Alex was like, "What you're working on is pretty cool." And I was like, "Hey, your YouTube channel is pretty cool. Like, let's see what we can do together." And so all that to say, introducing Alex as a new host on The Road Forward.
Well, not full time, okay? Flint, you're going to be in here occasionally, okay? We still need you.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yes, for some episodes, I'll be popping in here, every so often. But yeah, I'm super excited, and that I'm pumped, dude. I appreciate that. That's awesome.
Yeah, look, this is going to be so much fun. I mean, you bring a whole lot of energy to the team. You've already created some great marketing stuff for us on YouTube, some great content, and you were at the Line Haul Summit. So for those of you that don't know, we hosted the first ever 2-day meetup of FedEx ground contractors. It went phenomenally well. We had like 700 people there. A lot of great content, a lot of good vendors, good food, good drinks. I think everybody maybe got too drunk at the convention, which I think is a good thing. I don't know if I can say that on the air, but everybody was a little bit hungover, which was kind of fun. And so, yeah, you were there. You videoed a lot of stuff, so there's probably more to come on that, right?
Right. No, definitely. So I've been to conventions similar to this, but not necessarily so specific, like specifically FedEx, line haul. I was at the Mid-America Truck Show literally 4 months ago in March, I think it was. And it's a very similar, but all of the vendors are basically more specialized for FedEx contractors. And it's super important because, again, FedEx does dictate, it's like, hey, here's how much this lane pays or how much these routes pay. So it's like using some of the tools that those vendors had to optimize your fleet and make it more efficient is like super phenomenal. And so seeing how in-depth some of those tools went was really, really great.
And you'll have some fun. You'll get to drink some free booze paid for by us, which is always a plus. So,
right.
Yeah, look, I mean, it was a lot of fun. So, Alex, I want to take this episode, like now that we've kind of introduced you, I want to take this episode like a step deeper and dive into like your experience in trucking and like what happened, right? Like you went out of business. Give us the play-by-play.
Wait, hold on. So you want me to do the story of how I went out of business, or you want me to like from way back when I first started?
Well, yeah, let's start from the beginning. Like I want to end at the part where you go out of business. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do the short and sweet version. So I started. I don't do normal trucking. It's like hotshot, basically a pickup truck with a flatbed trailer. And I started as a company driver in the summer of 2015, and somewhere in November of 2015, I ended up getting my own truck in preparation to become an owner operator. And then instead of going and hitting the road as an owner operator, I ended up taking an office job dispatching my truck and trying to put a driver into the truck. And so for 6 months that didn't work out because the dispatcher pay was not enough, and they didn't let me, as the dispatcher, the company didn't let me dispatch my own truck. They didn't want like nepotism or favoritism or whatever it is. They didn't want you to load your truck really well and then disregard all the other owner operators you're supposed to be loading. And the guy that was dispatching my truck wasn't doing a great job. And so I had no experience in how to manage a driver, how to manage a truck. I didn't have any processes in place. And so for 6 months, it was just like losing money basically. And so then I told them like, hey, that's it, bro. I'm done. I'm going broke. This is ridiculous. So then, the driver, he wanted to do something else anyways. So it worked out. And so I just ended up starting driving my truck in the summer of 2016, roughly. And so from there, I was an owner operator on the road. I think till the end of 2019. And then in 2020, I ended up getting my own authority and actually going out as like my own company, booking my own loads, doing my own invoicing, all that. And and then in 2020, I was running under my own authority now and booking my own loads. And that's of course right when COVID happens. And so, I would say that was the first time where I was simultaneously concerned and grateful for trucking, because I was concerned is like, well, hold on, everything is shutting down. This is really scary. And I did end up I usually would have a load for the weekend every weekend. Like I don't like sitting the weekends. And there was only one weekend in March where I sat. I didn't get a load. But that's it. The entire 2020 I was working. And so as I'm working, I'm still able to pay for food. I hear, people are getting laid off, all this stuff. And so it's like and it went from concern to being grateful. Like, oh, even in the craziest times, there's still work to be done. And that's phenomenal. And so in 2020, it's like, okay, this is actually a pretty cool industry. And so 2021, it's like at the end of 2020, I'm like, hey, let's try to grow something, right? So then I, save up for one truck or for another trailer. And so then I try it out with a driver. And then in the beginning of the year, in January of 2021, I'm like, okay, great. We got 2 trucks, me and one driver on the road. And so then it's like, okay, how do you build out the infrastructure to run and manage a trucking business, right? So you hire a dispatcher, and then how do you train dispatchers? And so all these things start to go through your head, and slowly but surely it's like, okay, then we got a third company driver. And then I made a pivot. I was like, look, company drivers might take a really long time because you're tying up your own capital. So you're waiting to reinvest your thin margins from your 1, 2, 3 trucks. You're waiting to get that enough to where you get another truck on the road, and it's going to be really slow growth. And so somewhere halfway, in the beginning, in between first quarter and second quarter of the year, I'm like, let's take on owner operators, right? Let's speed this thing up. And sure enough, once you start taking on owner operators, you realize like, oh wait, this is actually really nice. I don't have to buy any trailers. I don't have to buy any trucks. I just build out the team and the infrastructure and the technology. And so then that just works, finding loads for these guys. And so it started to work really well. So well that I ended up going through almost 50 owner operators, right? And so it's like, that means 50 owner operators did all the onboarding, leased on, delivered a load, and then it eventually quit. And that was all under one insurance company. And so when the time came to renew, which was, 2 months ago, we're down to 17 trucks. So out of 50 people that came through the company, only 17. 12 of them were owner operators and 5 of them were company trucks, right? So really only 12. So it's like my retention was really terrible. My churn is really high, which is terrible. Insurance probably saw that and they're like, God, no. Like, no, not even with a 10-foot stick will I touch this company. And unfortunately, the way they do that is they don't say no. They just give you a price that's ridiculous. And so that's exactly what they did. They gave me a price that was almost double of what for the same 17 trucks, it was almost double what I was currently paying. And in trucking, it's one of those things where it's like, there's articles about trucking companies going out of business for insurance. And it always never made sense to me. It's like, why are trucking companies going out of insurance? Like, insurance is not that bad. Now it makes sense. Now it absolutely makes sense, because at the end of the day, your insurance cost needs to be it needs to be around 10% of your gross revenue, or it needs to be less than 10%, right? So if you can get your insurance cost to 5, 6, 7% of your gross revenue, you're doing really well. Well, insurance doubled, and so my insurance was like almost 20% of my gross revenue. It's like 20 cents of every dollar you make goes just to insuring the company. It's ridiculous, right? And so unfortunately, I had no choice. I had to make the decision. And so I ended up shutting down. It sucked because I had to lay everyone off. A good chunk of them were the owner operators, and so they were contractors, but it sucked for the drivers. I really my retention with drivers was drastically different. Drivers that I hired stayed with me. One guy was almost 2 years. Another guy was a year and 4 months. And another guy was 6 months. And he was like, I'm not going anywhere, dude. Alex, you treat us well. You pay us fair. You take care of the trucks and trailers. You have a very refined system. Dude, I love it here. And so with drivers, the retention was much better. And so I think I realized my strong suit was like, if I'm going to give trucking another shot, it might be with company drivers instead of with owner operators. But so, yeah, I did. And so I ended up making this decision to not renew the insurance. And so that's when I, posted on my YouTube channel, and Flint reached out, and it's awesome. And like the cool thing that really, I don't know, Flint, do you hype yourself up or no?
I don't know. What do you mean hype myself up?
Well, I don't think you realize that a lot of companies don't do a TMS with their own hardware, but on top of that, and this is what I realized, they don't do their own navigation either.
Nope.
And navigation was actually one of the things that I struggled with a lot. And because it's like, well, we're in a pickup truck, and so technically we could use Google Maps, and then you find yourself in New York State on a parkway, and you're like, oh, this is not good because the bridges are only 8.5 feet tall.
Yep.
Yep. So it's like, I don't know of any other companies, and this was why I was excited, and that's why this is what the enthusiasm when you reached out is like, hold on, looking at what you're doing is there's a lot of potential here for it to bring a ton of value to trucking companies. Why? Because I had 17 trucks.
Yep.
Guys ask me all the time, hey, Alex, should I buy a trucking GPS for $700 or should I use an app? And it's I don't know what to tell them because their trucking GPS doesn't integrate with anything. So then they manually have to type in their addresses. It'd be nice to, hey, here's the dispatch and here's the dang turn-by-turn directions.
Yeah.
It's how easy is that? So all the things that you're working on combined together, dude, it's phenomenal. It's going to be something I'm hoping it's going to be something awesome.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So look,
there's something huge.
This was my experience too. When I owned a trucking company, similar story to you, right? The market dynamics changed on me overnight. I didn't have the insurance problem, but all of a sudden, we just could not run profitably. Our the market changed and people were running for the price of fuel, and it just didn't make sense anymore. So we had to shutter the business. But yeah, look, I had the same challenge, and that's why I started this company. Was I had 4, 5, 6 different systems. None of them talked to each other. They were all miserable to use, both for the drivers and the office staff. It was just it was a disaster. There just had to be a better way to run that business. And so that was really kind of where this whole idea for Truck Spy came from. But I'm curious. I want to dive in just a little bit more into your story because you obviously struggled with retention, which I think a lot of people in this industry struggle with. Very few people find a way to get that right. So let's dig into that a little bit. Why do you think your retention sucked?
So, for owner-operator specifically, I think the main issue is, a lot of guys, when it comes to hotshot, with trucking, it's obviously a little bit different, but when it comes to hotshot, they think it's I'm going to work my 9 to 5, and then I'm just going to go run a couple of loads on the weekend. It's no, that's not, and a lot of times it's bro, if you're not putting in 3 weeks on the road, it's not worth it because then you're making as little as if you had a normal job. And it's like, if you're not doing long haul to make it more or sometimes twice as much as your normal job would pay, it's like, then why are you doing long haul, right? It's like the whole point of long haul is that you're making twice as much as you'd be making at a normal job, right? It's like, why do guys not like local? Because they're only making, the average salary or the average income of a trucker is like $56,000 a year. It's like, okay, well, since most truckers are local, it's like, well, then that's what you can expect when you're local, right? When you're home every night, it's like about $1,000 a week. And so when you're long haul owner operators, they're making $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a week after all the expenses. And that's when long haul becomes worth it, because for a very short amount of time, you can set yourself up financially, dig yourself out of a hole maybe that it can be beneficial. But the problem is, not everyone can do 3 hard weeks on the road.
Right.
And so it's like, guys are coming in, they're like, oh, hey, I got my pickup truck, and oh yeah, what's your family situation? Yeah, I got 4 kids and a wife, and like, wait, you're going to be on the road 3 weeks? Like, don't get me wrong, I was on the road, but when I was on the road, I had 1 daughter, and that's it. So my wife was okay with that, And then, when my wife gave birth to our other kids, it's like, well, that's when I slowly started transition to get off the road, right? But still, it's like, I'm getting guys that are, they're just not ready to be 3 weeks on the road. They have no idea what it's like to not have a beer every weekend with your buddies. Yeah. They have no idea what that's like. No, they're stuck in their routine where it's like they wake up in the morning, they have a cup of coffee that they made or whatever, and then they know they can live for Friday. It's like, hey, I know Friday's going to be there. We're going to go, to play some pool with my guys and, drink a couple beers. It's like, you can't do that. You can't do that. You can't see your kids. You can't see your wife. You can't see your buddies. You can't see anything. It's like complete dedication to the job. And a lot of people underestimate what kind of toll that plays on like a lot of relationships at home.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you nailed it, right? Like the companies that are really good and that don't have, or I say really good in the retention department have, I think, done like a few things right. They've figured out, whether it's long haul or local, they've figured out a way to set expectations and find the right kind of driver for their company, for their role. And then I think that they do a really good job at supporting those drivers through that difficult period of work, whether that's long haul or local or whatever it is. Like they find a way, both financially and like the intangible part of management and support. Like they make those drivers feel like they're really a part of something, right? Which they are in a lot of cases. And I think it's really hard. I don't know what your experience was with this, but I think it's really hard when you're a smaller company, whether you're doing hotshot or trucking or whatever it is. I think it's really hard to build that culture in your organization, especially in transportation, because it's not like you've got the flexibility of having 300 trucks, right? Where, a truck's broken down, like we'll just swap some equipment. Oh, driver didn't show up, or driver needs a weekend off, like I'll just swap my drivers around. Like you just don't have that kind of flexibility. You don't have the financial and the human capital resources in the office to like fully support drivers, right? So it makes, in my opinion, at least from my experience, it made it really hard to compete with big companies in the market.
Right. And another thing I'd want to add is, like, yes, big companies have certainly done they've outlined expectations probably a little bit better than I did, right? For sure. 2 is they are looking for the right people and they offer them support in the position too. But 3 is, I think a lot of times they go for different customers.
That's true.
Right. And so it's like these companies are going for the local customers. Yep. They're not going for the long haul customers. Right. And because I was spot market, basically like 90% spot market, I could go kind of where the load pays to go. And that's it. I don't really have a choice. If it pays to go to, California or New Jersey, I have to go because that's what it pays to go. Like they're not paying me enough to go to Oklahoma because then I'm going to be stuck in Oklahoma and I'd rather make money than not make money. Right. So, and so I think like when you start growing your fleet bigger and bigger and bigger, you can then start focusing on the customers that can make it so your retention is better. It's like, oh, darn it. But with hotshot, that's impossible.
No, I just think it's really interesting. I mean, we, talk a lot about kind of culture and safety and all these things. And what's funny is when you're like in a smaller transportation company, like a lot of times that stuff's not even on your radar, right? And I from your experience, it probably should have been, right? I mean, I don't know if you were involved, I'm sure your company was involved in some accidents, right? And you probably maybe were invited to a lawsuit. Like, I mean, should, like in hindsight, should you have been more focused on those things? Do you think it would have set you up for success more?
Okay. So it's tough because I didn't have any lawsuits, so thank God for that. I only had one accident that was like a claim on the insurance accident. Driver pulled out incorrectly and ended up hitting a car and like totally messed up. It was a Toyota Tacoma, totally messed him up. But yeah, I mean, you underestimate as a company owner what like a good driver document can do for you, or a good like company policy document. Like, hey, here's how we do things. Every morning you do your pre-trip inspection, and here's what that pre-trip inspection looks like, and it's like, and so I think as a company, right, and I remembered what we were talking about as we were talking about like the number of trucks and whatnot. And so I know why that is, because like you said, when you have 4 trucks on the road and one of them doesn't have a driver and is down, that's 25% of your revenue. And that is terrifying. That 4th truck might be your entire trucking company margin, right? So it's like the 3 trucks will break even on your insurance and all your overhead, where that 4th truck will essentially bring in just the profit for the whole company. And so it's like you don't focus on building out or typing up a company policy document, because that truck is sitting. You need to get a driver in there ASAP.
Yeah, right.
Right. So you tell the guy, and so you're doing more a like one-on-one for every little issue. Everything is a like single individual issue handled manually by you. Whereas instead, I probably should have done is like, let me just type up all the issues that I think could happen, and then refine it with each hiring step, instead of doing each one manually and then going like, oh, you know what, 12 trucks, I should probably get a company policy document, huh? It's like, no, you should have done that right away, hired 1 truck and then refined it to 2, refined it for 3, refined it, and then by the time you get to your 12th one, this thing is going to be rock solid.
And had a training program so that every time you onboard a driver, you say, look, this is the 2 days of training or the 3 days of training that I give you, right? And it's standard across the fleet, and you set them up for success. Like, that's the stuff, if you go look at the mega carriers like JB Hunt and Schneider, like, it seems so stupid, right? Like, we can sit here and talk about it, but they do that stuff really well. Not that they don't have retention problems, but they do that stuff really well, and they manage their risk.
Right. Yeah, they definitely have retention problems. But like, and if you go through it, you're like, this is so boring. This is so, like, do you guys really have to explain this to me? And it's like, well, no, they don't, but you're going to be mad when they enforce it. And so that's why they explain it. Because you can bet your money that something's going to happen, and you're going to be like, hey, can you guys advance me this, like, cash right away? It's like, no, our driver document, our driver policy agreement says that we don't advance. It's like, so it's like, and then, like, unfortunately, sometimes drivers will throw a fit, and you're like, oh, that's so dumb. It's like, dude, this is why we went over it in the beginning before you even started here. Right. Like, yeah, dude, there was tons of issues like that too, So, but to answer your question, I think you asked is like, would that have set you up for success? Possibly. I think the main issue with hotshot is it's really difficult to get any type of freight consistency. And from like looking back at it now, I saw like when semi-trucking companies reach the 25-ish truck mark, and at a peak in March of this year, I had 27 trucks deliver in 1 month. 27. So I was renewing my insurance at 17, but at peak was 27. And right around that 20-something truck mark, a lot of trucking companies start to switch to contract freight, which is they're starting to win contracts. So to answer the question of like, would doing those things in advance set me up for success? The answer would be no, because it's really difficult to get any level of contract freight in hotshot.
Yeah, well,
that's the unfortunate.
That makes complete sense. I mean, hotshot's like obviously really tough because you have to play the spot market very strategically, because you can't, like, you're not a tractor trailer. You can't just jump on there and take anything. And there's probably very limited number of even direct customers that you can support. Like, not very many companies, I've got to think, are moving freight that can be moved on a flatbed hotshot trailer.
Right. Now, what's crazy though, and this is where I was trying to get to, which is like, I want to use the content that I upload, right? And this is why I was so aggressive in uploading YouTube videos. I want that to be like my customer funnel. And so when towards the end, it was about 75-25 split. Or 80-20 maybe. 80% was spot market, 20% was customers, direct customers. And why were they reaching out? Because Alex, I watched a YouTube video and now I need this item shipped.
Yeah, that's great.
20%. And it's over the course of about 2 years of, consistently uploading, I was able to get it to 20%. And so but we were gaining traction much quicker than we started out. And so it's it was really coming to where it's man, if the insurance renewal was in December or something, I really think we would have gotten to a point where it would have been 40%, 50% direct customers. And if we had the capacity, and this is why, again, you want to build quick, is because, when a customer watches, it's not like the people that are watching me are only in Texas where I am. They're not. They're everywhere. And so it's you have to have the capacity when a customer calls you and says, hey, man, I bought a flatbed in North Dakota. Can you bring it to me in New Jersey? You got to have that capacity. And it's if you know that you got a guy going from Washington across the way to North Dakota to Chicago to deliver the load, and he has a space to pick it up, it's then you can tell the customer yes. So it's it's a two-edged sword of you got to build capacity really quickly, but you also want to make sure direct customers can call you from all over the country with the content that you're uploading. And so it's both of these things are happening super fast. And unfortunately,
timing didn't work.
When,
yeah.
Well,
look, I mean, that's
right,
you bring up an interesting point about differentiation, because I think a lot of companies, trucking companies especially, struggle with how do we differentiate. Commodity, the freight market is so commoditized, right? A dry van is a dry van, point A to point B, load it up, haul it, deliver it, done. We don't get paid dwell time, because if you ask for dwell, I'll give it to company B. So a lot of people struggle with how do we differentiate in this market. And you just brought up another interesting point of differentiation that I hadn't thought of, was content on the internet, right? Sounds kind of silly sitting here as a trucking company guy, because who's got time to go around and film stuff and produce it? We talk a lot about safety being a differentiator, but that's a really kind of a cool idea.
Right. Right. And don't get me wrong. It's not the only thing I did that was different was, I was uploading YouTube videos. No. I do think relative to all the other hotshot companies, it's I provided tracking with an automated system that I built on my own, tracking on every shipment live connected to the driver's ELD. So 24/7 live location tracking. It's a lot of ELDs, a lot of companies don't do that. A lot of ELD manufacturers don't do that. That's not. I provided a picture of your load because we had flatbeds. Customers want to know how their load is put on the trailer. I provided a load picture for every load, and I built that automation myself. So it sends the customer hey, driver's loaded. Here's a picture of your load, and it's okay, right? And it's I would say it was getting to a point where I was also one of the most technologically advanced hotshot companies,
cool.
if that's even possible. I don't think. And then another problem that a lot of brokers have is they have to go chase down the carrier when the load gets delivered. Well, I had when a driver a driver and owner operator has to submit the bill to me to get paid. Right. And so carriers do that really well. Well, when the driver submits it to me, my automation runs it to send it directly to the broker. And so then they get a notification, your load is delivered. Here's your delivery paperwork. And on it says the person that received it, the date, the time, everything they could possibly need. And so it's I built all of those tools out by myself, and so it's man, I didn't just learn how to do YouTube. I also learned how to actually manage a trucking business, and so I think that's some of those things that were setting us apart. Unfortunately, it's the churn, kind of kicked my butt first. Before I could fix some of those other issues, the churn kind of got me first. It's oh, darn it. But dude, it was fun. It's it got me. It was. I mean, I gained so much experience, so much knowledge, and it's and the main reason is now I can provide TruckSpy value. It's all because I was able to just put in the work and learn.
Look, that's what it's all about, right? Literally entrepreneurship. What's the definition of an entrepreneur? You find a way, and I'm going to butcher this, but you find a way to accomplish a lot with very few resources, right? That is the path that you went down, and it sounds like you learned a lot from it. Look, I think you're going to be great on the podcast, Alex. So welcome to the team. Can't wait to hear more podcast episodes from you.
Right. Dude, I appreciate it a lot, man. I don't know how much value I'll be able to bring, telling my story over and over. I think, Flint, maybe when the time comes, me and you open a trucking business, once we sell TruckSpy, we build up TruckSpy, we sell it, and then we open a trucking company and we show them how to do it right. Okay?
Maybe. We'll put it on the vision board. Oh, that's good.
Awesome, dude.
Well, hey, look, if you're enjoying the show, we really appreciate reviews. There's like a little couple of stars somewhere beneath your episode, wherever you're listening to your podcast. Scroll down, give us however many stars you think we deserve. We obviously like 5-star reviews, but if you think we're worth less than that, feel free. We appreciate any reviews. And look, we really appreciate you listening. Alex, I got to ask you, since this is the road forward, what do you have on your radar for the 12 months, your road forward for the next 12 months?
Well, I mean, I'm really excited about like TruckSpy. I think what you're making is actually really cool. And it's like, I'm saying it's cool, not because, I'm doing the channel or helping out with the marketing. I'm saying it's really cool because it was actually a legitimate thing that my transport companies struggled with. So, I want to see like where like we can go with TruckSpy, and then from there I would actually like to take another stab at being a motor carrier eventually. I'm certainly not ready right now, and I want to I now have a more like a better understanding of how to differentiate myself. And so it's like I will be making sure that differentiation sets me aside, like sets me apart from the competition, so that maybe I don't have to be on the spot market anymore. So that's definitely in consideration, but probably about 8 to 10 months out for sure. So in the short term, definitely want to help TruckSpy. And then in the long term, I want to open my own carrier company again and actually install TruckSpy and be a user of TruckSpy and give you I want to give you live feedback, because as good as it is with software, it's never finished. There's always things to do. There's always, right. So it's like, I actually want to be a user as well. I want to be like that. I think that's going to be really cool. And then like give you live feedback too of like, maybe what drivers are recommending to me. And so it's going to be super interesting, but that's kind of what I want to do. I want to like blow up TruckSpy, like make it huge, make it awesome. And then from there, open my own carrier company and be a customer as well.
I love it. Well, Alex, thanks so much for making some time. This was a really fun episode.
I agree, dude. Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, sir. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.